On February 2024, Sheldon Johnson appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience alongside lawyer and advocate Josh Dubin. 38 days later, Johnson was arrested and charged with murder. This was episode 2096, marking Dubin's sixth appearance on the podcast, where he frequently highlighted wrongful convictions. On 3 of his previous appearances, Dubin brought individuals who had been wrongfully imprisoned to share their stories. However, this episode was different. While Dubin had previously showcased people who had been exonerated, he clarified that Johnson was guilty of his past crimes but had served what Dubin considered an unfair sentence minus 25 years in prison. Sheldon Johnson's story was steeped in adversity. Born in 1975, Johnson grew up in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers, a poverty-stricken housing project in Harlem, New York City. His family history was riddled with incarceration. His father served 15 years in prison, his grandfather had been incarcerated, and even his great-grandfather was a slave. His son, tragically, had also taken a life at the age of 12. Moreover, Johnson was the only one in his family with functional hearing, as both of his parents, his sister, and his aunt were deaf. His father, a drug dealer, often brought Sheldon along to translate during deals, and by age 12, Johnson was selling drugs himself. This lifestyle led to his early criminal activity, which escalated into 2 armed robberies at the age of 21. These robberies resulted in a 50-year prison sentence, even though only one person sustained minor injuries. A man hit on the head with a gun, requiring just 2 stitches. During his time in prison, Johnson underwent a personal transformation. He realized that he needed to change his life and began documenting his thoughts in a prison journal, where he reflected on the importance of hope, change, and reform. One entry, titled "Letter to My Younger Self," emphasized the need to find nonviolent solutions to problems, stating, "2 wrongs do not make a right. Violence only begets violence." In another entry, Johnson observed that prison could either bring out the best or the worst in its occupants, noting that those who pursued education were often the ones who thrived. Determined to improve himself, Johnson pursued education while incarcerated. He earned his GED, followed by a bachelor's degree in behavioral science from Mercy College. He quit smoking both cigarettes and marijuana and began working in the prison law library, where he discovered a talent for legal studies. Over the years, he even helped other inmates with their legal cases. Johnson wrote that he had grown dramatically during his 14 years in prison, discovering a love for Shakespeare, acting, philosophy, and criminal law. His transformation earned him the support of advocates outside of prison, including BuzzFeed, which lobbied for his release in 2016. David Roth, a prison social worker, described Johnson as a model inmate whose days were so full of productive activities that he fell asleep exhausted each night. Johnson's good behavior eventually led to his release after serving 25 years of his 50-year sentence. Following his release, Johnson appeared on a podcast called Success After Lockdown, where he discussed his commitment to never returning to prison. He shared similar sentiments when he appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, stating that people who earn degrees while incarcerated are 92% less likely to return to prison. Dubin used Johnson as an example of how change is possible, praising Johnson's turnaround and how he articulated his story. Johnson had even begun working for the Queen's Defenders, an organization focused on helping troubled youth. He expressed interest in attending law school, marveling at the distance he had come from the bowels of hell during his time in prison. However, Johnson's life took a dramatic turn on March 6, 2024, just 38 days after his appearance on Rogan's podcast. Police responded to a call from a tenant in New York who reported hearing 2 gunshots from the apartment of Colin Small, a childhood friend of Johnson, with whom he had spent over a decade in prison. The tenant also reported hearing a voice begging, "Please don't, I have a family." When police arrived at the apartment, Johnson answered the door and claimed that Small had gone upstate. Upon searching the premises, however, the police found half of Colin Small's body, with the other half discovered at Johnson's apartment, along with concrete and protective suit. Surveillance footage from outside Small's apartment captured Johnson attempting to conceal his identity with various disguises. In one still, Johnson was wearing the same jacket he had worn in a photograph for the Queen's Defenders. Johnson was subsequently arrested and charged with Colin Small's murder, protesting his innocence as he was taken into custody. Follow for more.